Hello, this video is brought to you by my Patreon supporters. Minasan, arigato gozaimasu. My name is Kurt, and this is my daily Good Life meditation, an exercise that I do every morning, a little bit after waking up. It's now 4:46 a.m. I do this to remember my life objectives and principles, those which are outlined in my book, Going Alone. And you can get a copy of that book at the link above. And if you don't see a link, there's one down in the description. I also use this time to think about the last 24 hours and how I did with the various challenges and opportunities that I met. I plan for the coming day, and I ready myself for death. But I like to start with a poem. And today, turning back to Edward Thomas, I've got what I think might be the first of his war poems. Thomas started off his life as a prose writer, writing very short essays. I really do like his work. So I'm making my way. You can see I have 2 marks here, making my way through his essays and his poems. That's the markers there. He started making poems just about the time he went off to war in World War II, largely as a result of a reaction to a poem by Robert Frost that Frost had written with Edward Thomas in mind. Namely Frost's famous poem, I don't remember the title, but it goes like this, you'll know it. Two roads I found in a wood, and I chose, 2 roads diverge in a wood, and I chose the one less traveled, and that has made all the difference. That's the gist of the poem. Frost had written that after spending a good deal of time with Thomas, talking about basically trying to convince Thomas that he was a poet, because he was writing prose at the time, showing him how his short prose was actually poetry, gussied up with words. And those were the 2 roads that he was referring to: the road of prose and the road of poetry. And the poem was talking about Edward's vacillation, not so sure which one he was going to go down. Isn't that interesting, that connection there? Thomas took it the wrong way. He took it more of a criticism, and it wasn't meant to be a criticism. It was more of an observation. And he wound up choosing the route of poetry and I'm sorry, I'm not telling the story right. I'm not telling the right story right at all. Frost meant it to be a poem about the 2 roads of prose and poetry. What Frost didn't know, that at the same time, Thomas was unsure about whether or not he should enlist to go to fight in World War I. He was in his mid-30s with a wife and 2 children, or was it 3 children, and could have not gone to the war, but he wanted to participate. He wanted to do his bit, but he wasn't sure what to do. And he took the poem that way. Frost's poem, the timing was pretty bad to receive that poem, and he was actually upset about it, upset with Frost. He actually decided to enlist, and he went to war. He went to France as an artilleryman, and when it wound up dying in pretty short order on the front in one of the big battles. And so he also made the choice to become a poet at that point too. So his poetry, it's not known whether we should consider, it's undecided if we should consider Thomas to be a nature poet or a war poet. And he started writing poetry as he went to war. And I'm reading all of the poems, and I think that this is the first one here. It's called A Private. The first one that I can recognize is clearly a war poem. So I'm going to read it to you now, with all of that in mind. That was a long intro, wasn't it? It's a short poem, only like 9 or 10 lines. There's a couple of vocabulary here. I need to explain some of these words you may already know. Staid, S-T-A-I-D, is someone who is settled, unadventurous, and very serious. Bores, B-O-R-E-S, dull, uninteresting, or tedious person. The drover, a drover is someone who, I looked it up and now I can't remember. Let me go back to this one. Wiltshire is a county in South England where Stonehenge is. He refers to that, Wiltshire. Above the town, beyond the drover. I looked up the road drover, and now I can't remember what it is. I didn't write it down. Usually I write down what it means. I don't know. I think in this case it's referring to a pub called the Drover, because it's in quotation marks, the Drover. So let's just call it that, a pub called the Drover. I'll read it once, maybe twice. We'll see what we think. It's a short poem. A private. This plowman, dead in battle, slept out of doors many a frozen night, and merrily answered staid drinkers, good bedmen, and all bores. At Mrs. Greenland's hawthorn bush, said he, I slept. None knew which bush. Above the town, beyond the drover, 100 spots the down in Wiltshire. And where now at last he sleeps, more sound in France, that, too, he secret keeps. Get it? I didn't. I had to read it several times before I got it. It's a reminiscence about, or a wondering of where the dead plowman who died in the war in France is buried. As a plowman, he would have been, and Thomas writes about this in a similar, in the bit of prose that I'm reading right now, this one here that you can see all marked up. It's called A Return to Nature. It's about a man who works it's basically the similar type of thing. He drives the cart for the haymakers in their season, and sleeps abroad under the trees and the bushes, wherever he is. The private, as a plowman, does the same thing. And so the question is, where does he sleep? He sleeps here, there, by the hawthorn bush. But where? No one really knows. And now he's dead in France, buried somewhere in France. No one knows where. Let's read it one more time. A private. This plowman, dead in battle, slept out of doors many a frozen night, and merrily answered staid drinkers, good bedmen, and all bores. At Mrs. Greenland's hawthorn bush, said he, I slept. None knew which bush. Above the town, beyond the drover, 100 spots the down in Wiltshire. And where now at last he sleeps, more sound in France, that, too, he secret keeps. Nothing like starting the day well moved. Okay, let's get to it. Last night and yesterday, it was a Saturday. Ambitious Saturday. I had so much I wanted to do in the morning. Did all my writing, fed the dogs. I still didn't catch up on the darn, I'm 2 weeks behind on my journal. I mean, I've got all the journal entries written, but I need to compile them I need to compile them is what I need to do. That's a process I do usually on Saturdays, and I missed it last week, just forgot. And it just got too busy yesterday too. I went to the beach, did a long, good reading of Going Alone, reading from the chapter called Going Alone. 2.5 hours of reading, and then a battery just simply reached the end, and I had to stop. I wasn't even done. But I kept up. I could have gone to the end. It just, if the battery hadn't stopped. And then I came home, cleaned the house, went out with Yumiko. We had a nice walk with the dogs. Had lunch together, did our shopping, came home, had another nice walk with the dogs, watched some show together in the evening, smile. Then and we also, together we produced a viral video on YouTube. It was Yumiko's idea. She said, I was thinking about shorts, and I said, wabi-sabi, I'll do wabi-sabi moments of dead leaves on the gutter. She said, boring. She said, why don't you build shorts out of your old content, from Japan? So we just gave it a try, literally on our walk. We picked a video of Emily putting on her single tooth geta or ipong geta, and sent it out, and within 30-40 minutes it had 4,000 views. So said the app, but then later it seems to be hovering just under 3,000. Don't know where those other views went. So there you go, a way to do it. So I'll be practicing that, making shorts. And AI came up with the shorts brand, the Japan Lost and Found. Good title. Good day yesterday. Did I get ambushed by anything? How did I deal with the difficult parts? I was in a very meditative state yesterday most of the day. A good feeling of being kind of meditative throughout the day. Thinking a lot about disability. What? Thinking about disability? What are you talking about, Kurt? People in my life, or that I'm aware of, either directly or peripherally, following on social media, or people that I actually know, like Bob just down the way, 2 doors down. Bob has horror aplenty in his household right now. The worst type of horror. I talk to him almost every day. It's the type of horror that it's out of reach. I can provide a listening ear, not much more. And others. I realize, well, I don't realize, I know all along how lucky I am that I'm well. I could go on, I won't go on. There's just so much horror. Sobering. The poem comes to mind. Let's move on to today. No, I need to do the good life, don't I? I need to recite those things. My 8 objectives and 35 principles. These are the objectives: to be always ready to die. There you go. To make good, what I mean by that is, I'm thinking about some of the horror that I'm thinking about. Being always ready to die is one approach. Jeez Louise. To make good and effective use of time. To develop and maintain good and sound life principles. To cultivate good emotional reactions. To perform good actions. To recognize true limits and true opportunities. To do just one thing at a time, and do that thing slowly and deliberately and carefully, and to maintain my balance. The 35 principles then are war, reason, homunculus, anchor hold, home of good and evil, purpose, atomic principle, principle of nature, the pirate ride, maturity, the social principle, the principle of family, public speaking, temperance, life will not go well, the horror show, that which must be born, the feast of offal, distraction, agency and the great indifference, the best seat in the house, the restless man, the path of wildness, the great life adventure, the risk of avoiding risk, sin and damnation, complete oblivion, the season of philosophy, the bullseye aim, script writing, Got those backwards, didn't I? The uphill climb. Arena and utility. Nothing is enough. The principle of fun. And being ready. Oh, there's one more thing on yesterday and now. I've got this week's work on my mind. A lot going on. I can rise to this, Kurt. You can do it. It's a challenging week. Not nearly as challenging by any scale as what Bob and his wife are going through and others. But in my own measure, it's a challenging week. I have to keep my balance. I have to be slow and measured and careful. Staid in some ways. Professional. I can do it. I can do this. Now as for today, it's a full day off. I got nothing to do but just whatever the hell I want to do. I'll do my normal morning stuff, the stuff I promise myself to do every day. I'll do all of that now. And then after that, I'll have a nice day with my wife, largely at home, although I'll go to the beach and do my swim, take some good walks. I'm having second thoughts about my surgery. I'm scheduled to have surgery in November. Maybe I'll cancel it. I may not need it after all. Think about it a little more. And I'll make another video, a short experiment with that a little bit on YouTube. The whole kit and caboodle, and do some good reading. I want to make my way through some more of the prose of Thomas. And of course the book, the Boswell book I'm reading. Maybe I'll just go plunk myself at the beach with those two books and read. And watch the air show in bits and pieces. That'd be fun. Am I ready for death? Are my affairs in order? Yes. Are my relationships sound? Yes. Is my life's work done? Yes. Yeah, I'm ready. Don't want to go yet. I'm enjoying what I see. Although, with all the horror, it's awfully hard. Okay, I'll sign off now. I wish you all the best. Be safe, but not too safe.